Hello, fellow WestJet pilots and other podcast listeners, and welcome to this edition of the WestJet Pilots PIREP podcast. My name is Desmond Jordan. I am the chair of the Pilot to Pilot Committee, and I'm joined today by our MEC Chair, Bernie Lewall. How are you today, Bern?
Yeah, good, Des. It's great to be here.
Excellent. And also Andrew Hamber, our MEC Negotiating Committee Chair. How's it going today, Andrew?
Very well, thanks. Nice to see you, Des.
Excellent. Very happy to have you both here today. This is an important issue, I think, with our pilots. They'll be very interested to tune into this episode. Today, we're going to be touching on what's going on in negotiations with a little bit of a negotiations committee update. So we are into the conciliation process. I'm just wondering if you could just briefly touch on how we got to this point as it is.
Well, of course, everybody knows our contract was due December 31st last year. To that end, we commenced bargaining with the company on the 19th of September, and through various weeks, through September, October, November, December, and then on into January and February, we've been meeting fairly regularly, either every week or every other week, as the case was. We managed to accomplish quite a few things. We still have quite a few to go. While some of those we can continue to work on with the company and make reasonable progress, there are some fairly large outstanding issues that we won't be able to accomplish without conciliation.
So what would you say our priorities are in this negotiation?
I would say we've got job protection is a very large issue. We all saw the degradation to wages and working conditions when Swoop came on board, and to that end, we are focused on the job protections and scope. Second thing would be pay and compensation. We're trying to look through the lens of history that traditionally in Canada kept wages down, yet we're seeing both in Canada and the U.S., North America as a whole, I would say that wages are significantly increasing across the board, and so we're looking for market standard increases to pay and compensation. The third thing, of course, relating directly to a pilot's life are scheduling rules, and that's a key pillar of how we can have a great life or not a great life. So those are the three big issues we seem to be running into fairly significant headwinds with.
And so how might you respond to the idea that the company feels that it can't offer us a market competitive contract?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question, Des. But in my mind, if the company feels that it can't operate with a market contract, there are way bigger issues with this company. And we, as the pilots, are not going to subsidize this management group's inability to execute.
Okay. So, Andrew, what would you say the main sticking points are?
Well, Des, the three that we just spoke about with job protections, pay increases, and scheduling rules are the main sticking points. However, when you look at the sections we still have yet to tentatively agree to and find common ground on, everything's tied together. So when you can't accomplish one major section, it has tentacles into every other small section. So while we are making progress on some of those smaller sections, it's much harder when you don't have clarity on what's going to be happening with the bigger sections.
Okay. Are they asking for concessions?
To a certain degree, yes. They're offering increases, however, in a concessionary context.
And this is one thing I'd like to jump in here on is we're not in a concessionary time frame. You know, we're in a time where we're seeing massive gains south of the border. We're seeing gains within the ULCCs in Canada. Air Canada is coming up to negotiations within the next year and a half. It's not a time for concessions, and yet the company does appear to think that we should be accepting some concessions.
And how about with LOU2? How are the discussions going with that?
Well, Des, as the negotiating chair, and we're in active negotiations on these things, I can't say.
Des, as the MEC chair, I would like to say that as far as I'm concerned, LOU2 is dead. The company hasn't come to that realization yet, and that's frustrating, extremely frustrating. And in fact, they have passed over to us a revised copy of LOU2 with some actual concessions in it, which is amazing at this point in our negotiating cycle, especially when you see the gains that have been made south of the border and the gains that have been made north of the border with the ULCCs. It just astounds me that they're actually looking to make LOU2 worse than it actually is.
Andrew, do you get the sense that the company is trying to use this contract negotiation disproportionately to gain their competitive advantage?
I would say all companies try and use contract negotiations and contracts to their competitive advantage. That's a tough question to answer.
Can I just jump in here? You know what? It's really not our pilot's job to work at a discount so that management can hide their inefficiencies. That's not our job.
Okay, Andrew, one of the other questions that we seem to get is, how do we as a group know that the financial information that we are being given by the corporation is valid? What methods do we have to validate that information?
That's a great question, Des. We have our economic and financial analysis team at ALPA as a whole, and as well as our analyst at the table, Jeanette, are fantastic. They've been doing this kind of stuff for decades. All the information they get, they've been crunching this data for so long. It's fairly easy for them to build a financial model and see what's actually happening and what levers we are able to pull in order to come up with numbers for the contract and the costing. The company as well, their economic and financial analysis people do the same thing in the scenes behind, and they have a fairly productive dialogue with our team as well. So they work together to come up with a model that may be a little bit different on each side, but it's very, very close to what we're seeing, so that we can, as we pass proposals back and forth, we can get appropriate costing. Many companies that have ALPA on property will utilize some of their data as they analyze their own economics. And we're hopeful that as we move forward with this process, that WestJet will do the same.
Are there any legislative or judicial checks and balances against the company giving unfactual information to the process?
Absolutely. Through the Industrial Relations Board, should something come to light that we got incorrect information or didn't get enough information from the company and signed a deal that was detrimental because of that, we can go to the CIRB and file the appropriate paperwork or unfair labor practice articles to have another look at that and try and clear that up.
And we actually just saw an example of that with one of our competitors. They were in negotiations during COVID, and the question was asked day after day during the negotiations whether or not they were in open negotiations with the purpose of acquisition by another company. They denied it, and then at the end of the day, the acquisition did actually turn out to be true. So the association at that company took them to the CRB and filed a ULP. Through the ULP process, they did eventually come to a resolution that actually favored the pilots.
And for those of us who may not know, the ULP is an unfair labor practice filing.
And to add to that, I will say that our economic and financial analyst sitting at the table with us is working well with her counterpart to generate these models that we need.
And Andrew, I think she's been at ALPA for, is it 20 years?
22, I believe.
And she's worked with multiple ALPA properties across North America, so she's got a wealth of knowledge. And it's fairly hard to pull the wool over her eyes, I think, isn't it? Would you agree with that, Andrew?
I would agree, yeah.
Excellent. Andrew, is there anything else you'd like to say or add?
I would like to say that while we're running up against some significant headwinds, the company's negotiators have been showing up at the table ready and willing to work. I would also like to say that a shout out to Tracy Law and Joel Lautenschlager, my team. They're doing outstanding work. They work crazy hard, and we wouldn't be where we are without them.
And I'll back that up, Des. I'm down there with them most weeks, and those guys are up at 7 in the morning. They're working until 9 or 10 at night, most nights that they're in Calgary. So they're a solid team, and you see the results in the articles that they're passing across to the company. So I have utmost faith in the three of these individuals.
Okay, excellent. Well, that about brings us to the end of this version of the PIREP's podcast. Andrew, a sincere thank you from all of our pilots to you and your entire negotiating team. Just one last thing that we'd like to say to our pilots. Hey, in order for us to be successful in this process, it's going to take all of our pilots being engaged. So please do remember to read your communications, show your support, wear your lanyard, and stay engaged. Thanks very much, guys. We'll talk to you on the next one.